Hello, my friends. I'm back for another round of sweet tea and crime. Grab your glass and let's commence this tomfoolery. Y'all, it is colder than a well digger's backside in January. I normally love the cold, but it is doing something to me this year, honey. This week, we're going to be in Texarkana. Texarkana is a twin city located on the border of Texas and Arkansas, with the state line running right through it. It's part of Bowie County, Texas, and Miller County, Arkansas. Y'all, I thought it was pronounced Bowie, but Google says it's Bowie, so I guess that's what I'm just gonna roll with. You know, we'll see if I can remember that. I do have to tell y'all something random. And looking back, it cracks me up, but I'm sure y'all are not aware, but I am extremely white. I am ridiculously pale. Like, it's dumb. Well, when I was a teenager, I went to Texas on a mission trip with my church. It was the middle of summer, and y'all know super pale girl and summer sun do not go well together. So I grabbed some spray sunscreen and put it all over myself, including my face. Y'all, I ended up with second degree burns across my face. That spray sunscreen was not meant for people of my translucent color. It just cooked me right up. Okay? Anyway, now that I've got that out of the way and shared my insanity with y'all, let me let me get into some fun facts about Texarkana. It is the hometown of Ellen DeGeneres. I love her. Like, she's just so funny to me. Local folklore suggests that area was a favorite hangout for gangsters like Bonnie and Clyde because they could easily move between state jurisdictions. That makes sense. The movie Smokey and the Bandit begins in Texarkana, where a bootlegged beer was loaded onto a truck. Also, their motto is twice as nice. Ain't that cute? I think that's so cute. All right, let's get her going with these murders. The Texarkana Moonlight Murders was a series of unsolved serial murders and related violent crimes, if I could talk, in the Texarkana region of the United States in early 1946. The unidentified perpetrator is also known as the Phantom Killer, who is credited with attacking 8 people, 5 of them fatally in a 10-week period of time. So these attacks, they took place on weekends at night between February 22nd and May 3rd, and they targeted couples. The first 3 attacks occurred at Lover's Lane or quiet stretches of road in Texas. The fourth attack occurred at an isolated farmhouse in Arkansas. The murders were reported internationally and caused a state of panic in Texarkana throughout the summer, and rightfully so. Residents would lock themselves indoors while police patrolled the streets. They did arm themselves to the point the stores sold out of guns and ammunition, along with many other protective devices. Um, and we're going to get into like the nitty gritty details of everything. They did have a prime suspect in the case by U.L. Sweeney, I guess it is. Um, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into that one. So let's talk about the crimes. February 22nd was the first attack. Around 11:45 p.m. on that day, Jimmy Hollis, age 25, and his girlfriend, Mary Jean Larry, 19, parked on a secluded road just outside Texarkana, Texas, after seeing a movie. The Lover's Lane was approximately 300 feet from the last row of city homes, where present day Central Mall is located. Around 10 minutes later, a man wearing a white cloth mask appeared at Hollis's driver's side door and shone a flashlight in the window. Hollis told him he had the wrong person. It was kind of like, what do you want, you know? To which the man responded, I don't want to kill you, fellow, so do what I say. Hollis and Larry were ordered out of the car, and the man ordered Hollis to take, and I'm gonna watch what I say, to take off his G-dam breeches. After he did it, the man struck him twice on the head with a firearm. Larry told investigators that the noise was so loud that she thought Hollis had been shot, but it was really his skull fracturing. That is crazy. They thought that the assailant wanted to rob them, so Larry showed him Hollis's wallet to prove like he had no money. But then they hit her with a blunt object. The dude told Larry to stand up and run. She did try to run toward a ditch at first, but the assailant ordered her to run up the road. So they gave her a specific direction to run, okay? Larry ran to an old parked car, but there was nobody in it. And the attacker did catch up with her and asked her why she was running. Okay, crazy. When she told him that he told her to run, he called her a liar and knocked her to the ground. Then he sexually assaulted her with the barrel of his gun. Crazy. After the assault, Larry fled on foot, running a half mile to a nearby house. She woke up the people that lived there and called the police. Meanwhile, Hollis had regained consciousness and stopped a passing vehicle, who also called police for him. Within 30 minutes, Bowie County Sheriff and 3 other officers arrived at the scene, but the assailant was already gone. Larry was hospitalized overnight for a minor head wound, and Hollis was hospitalized for several days to recover from multiple skull fractures. That gives me a headache just thinking about it. The 2 victims gave slightly different descriptions of the attacker. Larry said she could see under the mask and that he was a light skinned African American man. And Hollis said the attacker was a tanned white man around 30 years old. He did say that he couldn't make out his features because of the light from the flashlight. Both of them agreed that the assailant was around 6 feet tall, so that did match on both stories. Law enforcement believed that they knew their attacker and were covering for him, which is interesting because I feel like they probably would not cover for somebody in that situation. So then on March 24th, Richard Griffin, age 29, and his girlfriend of 6 weeks, Polly Ann Moore, age 17, were found dead in Griffin's care on the morning of Sunday, March 2nd. That's not right. March 24th, not March 2nd, by a passing motorist. The motorist saw the parked car on a lover's lane 100 yards south of US Highway 67. Griffin was found between the front seats on his knees and his head resting on his crossed hands and his pockets turned inside out. Moore was found sprawled face down in the back seat. There's evidence that suggests she was placed there after being killed in a blanket outside of the car. Griffin had been shot twice while inside the car. Both had been shot once in the back of the head, and both of them were fully clothed. There was a blood-soaked patch of earth near the car, suggesting to police that they had been killed outside of the car and then placed back inside. There was some congealed blood that was found covering the running board of the vehicle, and it had flowed through the bottom of the car door. A 32 caliber cartridge casing, let me talk correctly, was also found, which they're saying, was ejected from a pistol wrapped in a blanket. There were no reports indicating that either Griffin or Moore was examined by a pathologist. There was a local rumor said that Moore had been sexually assaulted, but modern reports refuse that claim. So we don't really know. We think it's just a rumor, okay? April 14th at around 1:30 a.m. on Sunday, April the 14th, Paul Martin, age 16, picked up Betty Jo Booker, age 15, from a musical performance at the VFW Club at West 4th and Oak Street in Texarkana. Martin's body was found at around 6:30 a.m. later that morning, lying on his left side by the northern edge of North Park Road. Blood was found on the other side of the road by a fence. He had been shot 4 times through the nose, through the ribs from behind, in the right hand, and through the back of the neck. Good grief. Booker's body was found by a search party at about 11:30 a.m., almost 2 miles from Martin's body. Her body was behind a tree and lying on her back, fully clothed. She had been posed with the right hand in the pocket of the unbuttoned overcoat. That's a little weird. Um, Booker had been shot twice, once through the chest and once in the face. The weapon used was the same as the first double murder, which was a .32 automatic Colt pistol. Martin's car was found about 3 miles from Booker's body and 1.55 miles away from his body. It was parked outside Spring Lake Park with the keys still in the ignition. Authorities are not sure who was shot first, though. Presley and Texas Ranger agents said that examinations of the bodies indicated that they both had put up a terrific struggle, so they did fight back. Martin's friend Tom Albritton said that he did not believe an argument had happened between the victims and that Martin had not had any enemies. So it was like completely random, it seemed like. So then let's go to May 3rd. The fifth murder occurred on Friday, May 3rd, sometime before 9 p.m., when Virgil Starks, age 37, and his wife Katie, age 36, were in their home on a 500-acre farm off of Highway 67 East, almost 10 miles northeast of Texarkana. Virgil was sitting in an armchair reading the newspaper when he was shot twice in the back of the head from a closed double window. When Katie heard the sound of the broken glass, she came from the other room and saw Virgil stand up, then slump back into his chair. So he didn't die instantly. When she realized that he was dead, Katie ran to the crank telephone to call the police. She rang them twice before being shot twice in the face from the same window. So this dude didn't even go inside. He shot him from the window. She fell but soon regained her footing and tried to get a pistol from another room but was blinded by her own blood. Katie heard the killer at the back of the house and fled out the front door. She ran barefoot across the street to the home of her sister and brother-in-law. Since nobody was home, she ran to neighbor A.V. Prater's house and gasped out, "Virgil's dead," and then collapsed. Can you imagine, like, the sheer fear? Prater shot a rifle in the air to summon another neighbor, Elmer Taylor, who Prater sent to collect his car. So Taylor complied, and not all along, y'all. Sorry about that. Along with other members of the Prater family, took Katie to the Michael Meeker Hospital, which is now the Miller County Health Unit. Katie was questioned in the operating room by Miller County Sheriff W.E. Davis, who did become the head of the investigation. 4 days later, Davis talked with Katie again, and she discounted a circulating rumor that Virgil had heard a car outside their home several nights in a row and feared of being killed. So that was just a rumor. Let's talk about the investigations that they had. So investigations of the attacks involved law enforcement officers at the city, county, state, and federal levels. So they brought everybody in, okay? Law enforcement repeatedly challenged Larry's account of the first attack, believing that she and Hollis knew the identity of their attacker and were covering for him. And again, like, I don't understand that. Like, why, with such a brutal attack, why would anybody cover that up? Like, I don't feel like that's true. Larry returned to Texarkana after the Griffin Moore murders in hopes of helping to link the cases and identify the killer. But the Texas Rangers questioned her story and insisted that she knew who her attacker was. Officers did not publicly connect the Hollis Larry attack with the subsequent murders until May 11th, the day after the Texarkana Gazette published an interview with Larry. And when Presley and Reynolds called on the public to immediately report anyone who had any unexplained absences when the murders occurred. In response to the Griffin Moore murders, police launched a citywide investigation along with the Texas and Arkansas police, the Texas Department of Public Safety, the Miller and Cass County Sheriff's Department, and the FBI. So again, they brought everybody in, okay? It was that serious. Over 200 people were questioned and about the same number of false leads were checked. Authorities even tried baiting the perpetrator by recruiting teenagers to sit as decoys in parked cars while officers waited nearby. Could you imagine being a teenager and having the police be like, hey, can you come over here and like bait out this killer that's going around killing people? That's crazy. After the Starks murder, officers from the whole area were called in to help with the investigation. They even put up like roadblocks and stuff on Highway 67 East. By May 5th, there were 47 officers working to solve the murders. On May 11th, a teletype machine was installed in the Bowie County Sheriff's Office to connect with other law enforcement offices in Texas. The unofficial theory for a motive from the majority of the officers was that it was sex mania, since large amounts of money were not taken. They were just like, sex mania, that's got to be it. By March 30th, police had posted a $500 reward in an effort to gain any new information on the case. That offer of a reward led to over 100 false leads with no real clues or suspects. Then, within days of the Booker Martin murders, the reward fund had exceeded 1,700. Then it went up to 7,025 on the night of the Starks murder, and then it went over 10,000 in the next 10 days. Now remember, this was a hot minute ago. That was a lot of money back then. Heck, it's a lot of money now, but it was a ton of money back then. Authorities hesitated to link the Starks murder to the other crimes because the weapon used was a 22 and was believed to be an automatic rifle. By November of 1948, authorities no longer considered the Stark murder connected to the two double murders. So let's talk about the public's reaction. So the Griffin Moore murders raised lots of concerns, of course, but it was kind of shaken off as like an isolated incident, so they didn't think too much into it. And then the Martin Booker murders, created panic and shocked the community. It created that alarm to the public. Then it turned into hysterics following the murder of Virgil Starks in his home. There was constant media coverage, and on May 5th, the Texarkana Gazette stated that the killer might strike again at any moment, at any place, and at anyone. So they were just kind of feeding into it, as the media does. Prior to the murders, it was normal for homes to be left unlocked, but the murders caused residents to start locking doors, nailing sheets over the windows, nailing their windows down, door and window guards. People were arming themselves, like heavily arming themselves. And since the citizens were nervous and had gone out and gotten these guns, Texarkana actually became a very dangerous place. Because, you walk up on somebody's property, they're going to shoot you. Like everybody was just hysterical. Not that I blame them, because honestly, I probably would be too. But it had just gotten out of hand. Because like when officers would get called over to an address, they would have to stand in their headlights, turn on their sirens, and announce themselves to keep from being shot by some nervous Nelly with a gun. Okay. After about 3 weeks without an associated murder, Texarkana's fear kind of started to lessen. The concern lasted throughout the summer, but it did subside after about 3 months. So there were some rumors going around, okay? There were so many rumors. It just made the police investigations much more difficult because everybody was panicking, coming up with these crazy stories, just, pulling stuff out of thin air. And, one person says one thing and then it kind of spirals out of control. So on April 8th, a press conference was held to say that the murderer had been caught because they wanted to cut down on the rumors and, calm people down some. Honestly, don't blame them. But the rumors continued to spread through mid-May. Innocent people were being accused of being the Phantom Killer, and so authorities had to ask the residents, show some consideration for your fellow citizens. Y'all be nicer to one another. Stop accusing everybody you see of being the Phantom Killer. Calm your tits. Chill the hell out. You know? There was some vigilantism. Some of the young folks started parking on deserted roads, hoping to catch the phantom, and that had gotten out of control. It's just everybody was spiraling, okay? So let's talk about the killer. The unidentified killer did not get the nickname the Phantom Killer until after the murder of Booker and Martin. In the April 16th edition of the Texarkana Daily News, a heading read, Phantom Killer eludes officers as investigations of slayings pressed. So that it kind of just took off. This person became the Phantom Killer. Um, so let's talk about the description of said Phantom Killer. Okay. So Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry were the only victims able to give a description of their attacker. And as we had previously discussed, their descriptions contradicted one another. But they did agree that he was about 6 feet tall and wearing a white mask over his face with holes cut out for his eyes and mouth. So that's really the only description that we could get. You know, Officers came up with a profile for the killer, stating that they were dealing with a shrewd criminal who had left no stone unturned to conceal his identity and activities, and that the murderer's efforts were both clever and baffling. They also stated that the man they were hunting was a cunning individual who would go to all lengths to avoid apprehension. So there was a psychologist from the Federal Correctional Institution in Texarkana named Dr. Anthony LaPala, and I hope I'm saying that correct. And he believed that the time that the killer was planning to continue to make unexpected attacks on the outskirts of town. So he thought, it was going to continue. I just hit my microphone, so if you heard that, I apologize. He also believed that the same person committed all 5 murders and that the killer was somewhere between his mid 30s and 50 and was motivated by a strong sex drive and sadism. Over the course of the investigations, almost 400 suspects were investigated. There were a ton of false confessions that were investigated. So they were just having all of these leads given to them, and it was false leads, okay? False confessions, that they had to dig into and determine that they were false. So 3 suspects were taken into custody for bloody clothing. 2 of them were released after officers received logical explanations for the bloody clothing. And then the remaining suspect was held in Vernon, Texas for further investigation, but was later cleared. Let's talk about the main suspect here, okay? UL Swinney. UL was a 29-year-old car thief and counterfeiter. He was arrested in July during an investigation of car thefts. Police realized on the night of the Griffin Moore murders, a car had been stolen in the area, and a previously stolen car had been found abandoned. So officers were able to locate the former car and linked it to Swinney's wife, Peggy. So they arrested Peggy and, arrested her when she came to retrieve it. So Peggy confessed in great detail that Swinney was the Phantom Killer and had killed Booker and Martin. Her story changed in some details across several interviews, and police believe that she was withholding information due to fear of Swinney or fear of, incriminating herself. Which, yeah. Authorities were able to verify some of the details Peggy gave them, such as the location of the victim's possessions where she claimed UL had hidden them, which is interesting. Let's just put that in the back of our minds for now, okay? There was quite a bit of circumstantial evidence against Swinney, but Peggy's confession was the most important part of the case. However, Peggy recanted her confession. She was considered an unreliable witness and could not be compelled to testify against her husband. Officers worked for 6 months trying to validate Peggy's confession and tie Swinney to the murders. They found out that on the night of the Booker Martin murders, the Swinneys were sleeping in their car under a bridge near San Antonio. Swinney was never charged with murder and was instead tried and imprisoned as a habitual offender for car theft. So then we have Henry Booker Duty Tennyson. Can I just tell y'all that I think it's hilarious that his nickname was Duty? Doodie. Duty. I'm a child, I swear. Okay. So Tennyson, who was 18-year-old, he was an 18-year-old university freshman who died by suicide on November 4th of 1948. He left a note with cryptic instructions which directed investigators to a suicide note in which Tennyson confessed to the Booker, Martin, and Starks murders. He played trombone in the same high school band as Booker, but they were not friends. Authorities were not able to find any other evidence linking Tennyson to the murders. So now let's move on to Ralph Bauman. Ralph was a 21-year-old ex-Army Air Force machine gunner. He claimed to have woke up from a fugue state of several weeks on the day of the Starks murder, and his rifle was missing. He said that he had heard about a suspect matching his description, and so he hitchhiked to Los Angeles feeling like, I gotta go on the run for this murder. On May 23rd, he told Los Angeles police that he thought he might be the Phantom. Police arrested him but stated that several parts of his story had very few facts in it. Bauman had been discharged from the AAF for being psychoneurotic. Okay, so we're thinking he's probably just crazy, right? And then there was the saxophone peddler. On April 27th, a suspicious man was arrested in Corpus Christi, Texas, for trying to sell a saxophone to a music store. Okay, he'd come in, he was asking about selling it, but he started being evasive and ended up running. It was suspected that this was Booker's saxophone. Although no saxophone was found in his possessions, and they did find a bag of bloody clothing in his hotel room. After he was held for questioning for several days, he was cleared and no longer a suspect. Side note, y'all know I love a good side note. Booker's saxophone was found on October 24th, 6 months after her murder, and it was found in underbrush near where her body had been found. So it took them 6 months to find it. Okay? So there were some other suspects, such as Sammy, a German prisoner of war, an unknown hitchhiker, and I don't know if I'm saying this right, a Toka County suspect, but they were all cleared. And then last but not least, there was Earl McSpadden. On May 7th at about 6 a.m., the body of Earl Cliff McSpadden was found on the Kansas City Southern Railway tracks. And that was roughly 16 miles north of Texarkana. The body's left arm and leg had been severed by a freight train about 30 minutes prior. The coroner's jury's verdict said death at the hands of persons unknown and stated that he was dead before being placed on the railroad tracks. Because the murder is unsolved, even to this day, locals have speculated that McSpadden was the Phantom's sixth victim. However, there's also a prominent rumor, right, y'all, I'm so sorry, I can't talk today. A prominent rumor exists claiming that McSpadden was the Phantom and that he committed suicide by jumping in front of the train. But y'all know, I'm leaning more towards Swinney being the Phantom. My gut's just telling me that his wife wanted to confess and to show the world who Swinney really was, but she got scared of him and backed out. What do y'all think? Do y'all agree? Do you disagree? Tell me what you think. Well, let me get up and go drip this water so we don't have frozen pipes in the morning. Shoot me a comment or you can email me at sweetteaandcrime1. That's the number 1 at gmail.com. I do have some great ones coming up, y'all, so be sure to grab your tea and join me next week. Talk to y'all later, my little crime goblins.